Good Monday morning, everybody. I am Angie Callen, and this is No More Mondays podcast, where we believe you can have a thriving career, business, and an amazing life on your terms. And it's my job to bring you stories and guests who not only prove that fact, but help you live and work more authentically. I am already smiling, so you better get ready for a ride because we're going to have some fun this morning. I am a huge fan of networking. That comes to no surprise for any of you that have listened to at least one episode of my show. And so, and I've seen its power in my business, in my professional development, and in the careers of people I've coached. And so when I come across a guy who literally created something called the Success Champion Network, you know I'm going to go knocking on his door. And in the first 5 minutes of meeting him, we are meant to be friends. Danny Boyven is a speaker, networking trainer, entrepreneur, and probably most importantly, a goat dad who loves Renaissance fairs. So if that doesn't make you want to keep listening, I don't know what will. So I'm not going to keep him from the show any longer. Let's bring him on. Danny Boyven, welcome to No More Mondays.
Angie, so awesome. I love finding my people, right? The people that can just let their hair down, be themselves. So I'm looking forward to this. So happy Monday, everybody, and let's have some fun.
Let's do it. So let's talk more about networking. It is kind of your area of expertise. It's something I absolutely love. I'm a former engineer who loves people. So there's your anomaly for the day. That is everyone's response to that statement. And you had something in your bio I want to explore, and that's the idea of building an influential network and business based on genuine connection and community and support. And we have a ton of alignment here. Authenticity is probably my favorite word. So talk to me more about why it's important to build this kind of network and how we can create genuine connections with peers and supporters in our network.
So let me clarify one thing. When I talk networking, I'm always going to talk from the B2B perspective, not the B2C perspective, because there's a massive difference in those two frameworks. So most networking that people know comes from a B2C framework. And in the B2C framework, when you're selling to consumers and you're selling to people, the idea is you've got to be able to explain what you do to somebody so they can be interested in what you sell, potentially buy what you sell, or get you further in your career, job, or the likes. When you network B2B, our clients don't network. So let me explain. So if I'm a commercial printing company, or if I sell fractional services of any sort, the companies I'm selling to are multi-million-dollar companies. The CEOs of those companies are never networking. They're never going to be at an after hours. They're never going to be like a BNI type event, chamber event, right? So we have to network at a completely different level. So I just want to give context of where I'm going to be coming from a lot of my networking. A lot of it will cross over, but there's some very specific things that don't cross over between the two.
I want to dig more into that. And I'm glad you pointed it out, because I actually started at the second point I was going to start with and forgot to make this point that we've never really dug into B2B networking on this show and the power that it can have as a business owner. And I'm actually curious to hear about some of the differences between, let's say, B2B marketing, B2C marketing, because I have some thoughts in the back of my head that have me curious. So talk to me more about what is different in addition to this idea that if you're trying to sell into Google, Google isn't networking.
100%. So what we first have to understand is there's a huge difference between introductions and referrals. Okay. A referral is an introduction with at minimum a sales discovery call attached, right? So it's Bob meets Sally. I've told Sally all about your services. She's excited to speak, right? They know why you're meeting, and there's at least a sales discovery, can you work together type scenario played out. Everything else is an introduction. And specifically in B2B, you have to call out the two. And I get people all the time, like, you're just playing word games. Fuck no, I'm not. There's a massive difference. An introduction, I'm just putting two good people together. A referral, I'm putting my personal brand on the line.
A referral has context. Correct. Is that a good way to say it? So an introduction is, hey, here's you two people should talk. A referral is you two people should talk about a thing that ties back to your brand.
And I'm vouching that this is the person you should be working with. Right. So your personal brand is a type. And so the best way I can explain to it is, Angie, think about your number one favorite client. We're on the show, so I don't need you to tell me who it is, right? But your highest dollar value, best favorite client you work with. If I just met you for the very first time and I said I wanted to sell my services to your best client, how likely are you going to introduce me to your best client?
Mm.
It's not going to happen,
We
right?
don't
You're
have
not
a
going to do
strong
it.
enough relationship for that
Correct.
yet. I don't
Right.
know whether you're worthy.
100%, right? So what we have to understand is for you to refer me, there's a relationship, there's a trust factor because you're literally vouching to say, I'm the guy that you should be doing work with,
Mhm.
right?
Well, and
So
can I jump in and draw a
come
parallel?
on,
Because
come on.
there is a parallel here to B2C networking. And because so many out there listening are probably more familiar, this is exactly the same thing we talk about when I tell you, you don't take a freaking diamond ring in your pocket to a first date. Well, you don't take the hard ask to the introduction to somebody that you want to talk to who could potentially put your foot in the door for an internal referral for a job. Right. So it's the same thing of warming people up and getting to the right point in a relationship to tip the scales to something more tangible. That's exactly what we're talking about here. It's just a little different because it's higher stakes, likely a longer time to build the relationship.
For sure. And also add into the context of that, when you do B2C, literally everybody could potentially be your client. Right? So there's always this undertone context of I've got to impress you enough that you might lean in and say, "Ooh, I'd love to talk to you further about what you do."
Mm.
When you're in B2B, there's no context there, right? Because if I'm a commercial printer and my average client is doing $250,000 a year, like the person I'm networking with is never going to buy $250,000 worth of printing a year. So what I have to understand is there's no pretense that I'm ever going to sell you a damn thing. So it changes the complete
Interesting.
dynamics of the conversations. I don't have to convince you of anything. I also understand in B2B that it is a longer sales cycle. So there's no
Mm-hmm.
chance in hell that I'm gonna sit across and say some magical phrase, and you're gonna go, "Oh my god, where have you been my entire life? I have been looking for commercial printing, and I wanna move a $500,000 of business to you right now," right? So we understand that there's this long play. So for us, and the real key inside of B2B is you're not networking for referrals, which usually stops
Here it
people in
comes.
their tracks.
Can I drum
You're
roll?
yeah, absolutely. You're networking to be introduced to your best referral partners. So people who are selling into multi-million dollar companies at the same level that you are, but are not competition. Here's how I figured this out. When I did sell commercial printing, I sold it for 7 years. My largest account was a company called Mary Kay Corporate. And so they were a $2 million printing account for me. Okay. And I sold into them for a number of years. Their main print buyer was a guy by the name of Keith Hobson, and all his job was to buy printing. He was responsible for $12 million worth of printing for Mary Kay corporate offices. One day I asked Keith, I said, "What else do you buy?" And he said, "Well, I'm responsible for all the promotional products that come into Mary Kay as well." And they did $8 or $9 million worth of promotional products purchased every year. And I said, "Would you mind introducing me to one of the sales reps that, sells you your products and services?" He's like, "Cool." And so me, Keith, and a guy named Steve go out to lunch. And during lunch, Steve and I hit it off. And we both realized is we were both handling multi-million dollars worth of business inside of a company like Mary Kay. So we both had an understanding that we could sell at this level, manage this level, and take care of it this level. He took me into Motorola. I took him into Nokia. I brought him into Home Depot. He brought me into Lowe's, right? Because we weren't competition. So what I learned from that point on is networking for me I didn't care who I met. My first response was, I do commercial printing, but I'm really looking to meet anybody who sells promotional products. Because if I could do one, I could do many.
You find a power partner. That was like a
100%.
power partnership. So it sounds to me, to kind of like rein it in, simplify it, the web of networking is much more intricate and complex in a B2B scenario because you need more introductions to find the right referrals.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, like, if I came to you and said, I'm looking to buy a house, what realtor would you recommend? 9 times out of 10, you're going to have a realtor you're going to pull right out of your head. And
Mhm.
it's somebody who's earned that spot. Like they own that piece of property in your head. When you're selling at that level, people move in and out of that spot pretty quickly, depending on what they do for you. So when you sell B2B, because you're doing such bigger deals and such trust, once you earn that spot, you hold that spot for a very long time. But if I sell real estate, yeah, I can meet another realtor. They give me one referral, and you're like, oh, now you're my realtor, right? You're the one I'm going to
Uh-huh.
refer to. In the
Yep.
B2B space, you're going to hold people a lot longer because you're putting your brand. And imagine if you got accounts that are $500,000, $2 million accounts, to bring somebody else into that account, you better have some trust, there that they can handle it and manage it at that level. So you really vet your referral partners at that point.
Well, and even just from a company perspective and a B2B, a vendor perspective,
Yep.
companies don't like to deal with changing a vendor at
No,
that size. So
no.
once you can get in, and that's why there's a the payoff is worth the longer sales cycle, the longer or more steps to introduction to referral partners and things like that. But so here comes, I'm going to say, I don't know if it's a challenge or a scenario.
Okay.
I talk to a lot of people. Let's think more about less about commodities and more about services. So
Yep.
coaching space. I have a lot of
Yep.
coaches who I know listen, and there are a lot of conversations in the coaching space of, hey, how do I get B2B engagements? How do I go into a company and get paid to coach a team?
You're
And
not
what
going to
I
do
have
it through
found,
networking.
okay, tell me more.
Okay. So I run B2B networking, virtual networking groups all throughout the world. Okay. So one thing that people all the time tell me is I'd love to break into the B2B space and sell commercial. And I'm like, until you have clients that are in the B2B space, B2B networking is never going to work for you. And they're like, why? And I say, it's really, really simple. How cool would it be if I introduced you as a business coach per se to a company that has 100 employees doing 10 to $15 million a year? That'd be really cool, right? And everybody always like, yeah, that'd be so amazing. I'd love to work with a company like that. I'm like, cool. How do you return the favor to me? How do you introduce me to a
Mm.
company with 100 employees doing 10, $15 million a year? And they always go, well, I can't. That's the
Oh.
problem. You can only take from the network. You can't
It's
give
one
to the
way.
net. Yep.
Which I think it actually aha moment for everyone involved in this conversation here and out there is you have to remember when we say networking is about relationships, that means two-way street.
Yep.
Relationships are mutually beneficial. There ain't no symbiosis going on in or actually it would be symbiosis, right? Because otherwise you're a leech.
For
So
sure.
you have to be careful of that. Okay, so let's go further down this scenario. How do you start, right? This
So
is
this is
the
where
age
either
old, how do
people are
I get an
gonna
entry level job that requires 3-year experience conundrum?
right?
How do you
Yeah.
start?
So either people are gonna tune out after I say this, or you're gonna get messages saying that guy's an idiot or something along those lines. So get ready for this.
It means it's good.
If you only network, you're gonna lose. And this is coming from a guy who runs a networking organization. Here's why. Networking alone is a long play, especially in the B2B game, established relationships and the like. So you've got to be doing 3 things at all times to make networking actually work for you. You got to be networking. Done deal, right? 2, and we can come back to it. There's 4 places you should be networking at all times. We can come back to it. But
Oh my God,
2,
there's so much of a framework here, and I'm ready to dig in.
yeah,
Give me the
yeah,
3, and then we'll go back to the
yep.
4.
The second thing is you got to be putting out content. So content could be posting on social, could be workshops, getting on stages, guesting on podcasts. Like you've got to be putting out a content regime. And I got some cool tricks there too. The third is you must be doing some form of cold outreach. That is cold emailing, cold DMing, cold calling, door knocking. You have to.
And the live views just went to 0.
Everybody just freaked out and left. But here's the thing, okay? The cold outreach is key because that's your short-term wins,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Oh,
So if you understand the B2B, it's going to be this long-ass sales cycle, right? Your short-term wins are cold calling. They still work. Cold DMing, which is my favorite, right? Cold emails, they still work, right? The hi, you don't know me, but we should know each other. Would it be worth a conversation? That stuff actually works. There's a better process than that, but that's the idea behind it.
For now it works.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm going to go back through the three. So
Okay.
networking,
Yep.
put out content, cold outreach. Here's where I'm going to translate that. We all know a network and referral based businesses, especially like I'm going to talk to the solopreneurs or you coaches out there. We know that's a huge component of our business. But even once you have those partners, you can't control the business that they send you. And so you
Correct.
still need other channels in order to bring business in. Putting out content helps the passive, the SEO, the organic stuff come into your fold over
content
time.
should be a line item on your P&L because it's bringing in so much revenue.
And it's bringing in money. And then the third is the cold outreach is what you control. You can control how much of that do and how much of that you do. And if you know your numbers, you can say, dang it, I need to make 10K the rest of this month. Okay, well, based on my numbers, I need to go make 76 calls.
Yep.
Because of my conversions. And so you end up spreading the activity and your marketing and sales activities across a range of types that aggregate together to a whole. Guess what? This is why you and I are meant to be friends. This is what I teach to new coaches in my business fundamentals program. I love when someone joins me in my echo chamber. Okay, now I want to go back to the 4 types of networking.
So there's 4 places you absolutely have to be networking. So what I want people to understand is, and we'll talk to the B2B space, but this can work in B2C too. In B2B, very rarely are you going to find places where CEOs of multi-million-dollar companies are all congregated in that. So what we have to understand is there's other people that sell to our ideal clientele that we need to get connected to. So we'll go back to the commercial printing scenario. When I sold commercial printing, promotional products were a great referral partner for me. So the first place you should be networking is an association filled full of your referral partners. So now if you're a business coach, who else is selling to your ideal client but is not competition for you? Go find that association filled with those people because you're likely not going to have any competition in the room because nobody else is thinking that way. Okay.
CPAs, accountants, the bookkeepers are the first people that come to my mind.
Cool. Then go find the finance association. Go find Association of Corporate Growth with it all about mergers and acquisitions and the like, right? Go find, the places where all your referral, not your end users that can say, yes, I want to buy your services, but all your referral partners.
But other people serving the same audience.
Absolutely.
Also, fundamental, you got to know the audience so you know who else is selling into them, but that is an entirely different podcast and is probably one of the 72 that Donnie and I are meant to have together. Okay,
well,
so
really quick, just make that easy, is having an ICP, the one ideal client you sell to, that whole niche idea makes you referable. Just leave it at that. Is the more niche down you are, the more referable you actually are.
Because people know who to refer to you.
100%.
Bingo. Yep. Okay, second place we should be networking
is you need to be sitting on a nonprofit board. So
this is so good.
Think about individuals that traditionally sit on nonprofit boards. They're decision makers in companies. They're owners. They're presidents of hospitals alike. So for this to work, you have to find a mission you can get behind, a mission you can support. So I don't care if it's dogs, kids, hospitals, third world countries, whatever, a mission you can support. And then the board is got to be filled with powerful freaking people that have the pulse on their companies, the city, the whatever. You go join that particular board. If it's not mission focused, they'll catch you. They're going to realize you're only there to try and drum up business. So it's got to be something you care about. Okay. The way you get on that board is you walk up to the nonprofit, say, I'd love to volunteer. Would you guys need more help finding more members or more help raising money? And whichever one they're on, you go and you raise a shit ton of new members for them or raise a ton of money. And raising money for a nonprofit is simple. You call up people and like, do you give a crap about dogs? Do you give a crap about starving children? We need your money, right? It's really
also
that kind of
great way to rip off the cold calling Band-Aid, folks.
100%. And it's funny, is it okay? So you go join a dog nonprofit. Let's say it's a thing. Cool. Go to LinkedIn, type in dogs. click on post and see who's talking about their damn dog. Right.
Yeah.
That's the person you reach out and say, hey, I'm on the board for XYZ nonprofit. We support dogs. I'm just curious, are you supporting any nonprofits this year? Right. And you're creating a huge freaking cold outreach for yourself. And by the way, you're starting a bunch of cool relationships with other people that might be able to buy your services under
And
the
like the
guise of
same
the
as
nonprofit.
you, which is always a great foundation for building long-term
Absolutely.
relationships. Love
Absolutely.
it.
It's a great way to do it. Okay. Third place you need to be networking is you need to have a private group like a Success Champions networking. I don't care if you're B2C, BNI is fine. It works really, really well. If you're like in professional services, something like a Provisors would work really well in that range. So if you're, a CPA attorney, Provisors is great there, but you need to have one at least private group that you're in on a weekly basis, connecting and collaborating people. The
A
last
community. Find the community. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. The last one's the hardest one to get into, and that's a private club. So when you think of private club, I want you to think of a business club, golf club, cigar lounge, yacht club. And here's the thing. The biggest money in the world moves around in private conversations. So you got to get into the rooms with the private conversations. So like in Fort Worth, Texas, where I am, there's a Fort Worth Business Club. And it's a 12-story building. It's got a gym downstairs, restaurants and things up top. Cool place. A lot of business happens. But every like Wednesday or Friday night at like 7:00, this poker game breaks out. And this poker game has like the who's who of Fort Worth in it. So city councils, CEOs, billions of dollars transact through this room on a regular basis. You got to find those rooms because I can tell you, playing poker around that table, nobody talks about business, but billions of dollars that transact through that
But
room.
outside of that room, they're all talking about the people who are in the room.
100%. 100%. Right. So,
it.
One association, one nonprofit, one private group that you're a part of, and one private club. And if you can't spend the money to go out to the big clubs, go find a wine club, go find a cigar lounge, go find something smaller, and then work your way in there.
And I think in general, with everything we're talking about, you can start small. You don't have to call up Best Friends Animal League in Utah, the largest animal shelter in the country, and say, hey, I'm going to volunteer for you. You walk down the street to the Humane Society.
But you could go actually do Best Friends, and you could get on a board just as fast as easy.
Potentially. So way to prove me wrong. But if it feels this is where we're going next. So you actually you challenged me, but then created the perfect segue. If it feels a little too big, you can start smaller to get maybe a little bit more comfortable.
Oh, see, I'm going to challenge that even.
But then we always have to step out of our comfort zone. But
right.
but wait,
if it scares the shit out of you, it's the right
whole mindset thing anyway. So go.
Yeah, if it scares the shit out of you, it's the exact right move.
It's exactly what you're supposed to be doing. Yeah.
Yep. Because I'm just a believer, if you want to go the universal side of things, is the things that we know that would move our business forward that scare the crap out of us is a universe way of saying, hey, that's the direction you need to go. Go.
And I agree with that. However, let's also be realistic for a second that not everybody is you and me who will put on their big girl and big boy pants and go do those things. I find sometimes people need to start small, and as long as they don't stay small, it builds the confidence to go bigger. And this is where I'm going with this mindset piece of because otherwise it's like it's all or nothing, right? They won't even do it because they're trying to eat a whole elephant. So mentally, how do we get ourselves to put on the big girl and big boy pants and go do it?
Realize that not putting on the big girl, big boy pants has gotten you where you are in life.
What got you here won't get you there. Thanks, Marshall Goldsmith.
He's actually a really nice guy. I didn't meet him really, really well, but I got 2 seconds with him. He was a really nice guy. So, but yeah, look, if you are a coach, you're essentially out running your own business. Like me, I'm a business owner. I don't consider myself an entrepreneur because I'm not like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk going to build all these freaking monstrous things, right? So I'm a business owner.
Now I want to say I disagree with you.
So for me, entrepreneurs are people that are always reinventing themselves and continuing to create more businesses, more entities. A business owner is the person that's going to create one entity and they can build it to a monstrosity. But it's the entrepreneurs are the ones that are always reinventing themselves.
See, I think of entrepreneurship as kind of like a state of being or a state of mind versus a tangible thing? Because I would argue that as somebody who's taking one thing and continually growing it, you're still attacking it with an entrepreneurial spirit versus a business owner who starts a thing and lets it stay where it's at. So I'm challenging your own self-limiting belief over there, my friend.
I don't mind the context for whatever pushes you and drives you further, but I don't believe that if people actually met an entrepreneur, they would not classify themselves as one.
Hmm.
So if Tony Robbins, how many businesses does Tony have?
Yeah, I don't have that many digits.
107 companies, right?
Yeah.
Gary Vee, 9 businesses, right? Jeff Bezos, he's got over 200 like companies, right? Elon, he's got 7 or 8 monster companies, right? So when you think about entrepreneurs, they're doing these massive multiple. But if saying calling yourself an entrepreneur gives you the mental edge and you need, by all means, call yourself that. I'm just realistic with myself and know that I'm not as crazy as those fuckers.
Well, again, an entire topic of conversation we will not get on into. Entrepreneur, business owner, whichever way, solopreneur, whichever way you want to slice and dice it, I still attest that the big chunk of it is mental, and mindset is what is going to make or break a lot of what you do, because it's what holds us back and keeps us from doing everything that you just recommended. And so what I would love for you to do is speak into that a little bit, in the context of, you just gave us a great implementation plan, but what's up here in between our ears oftentimes holds us back from doing it. So how do we get there?
Well, first you got to decide what you're actually building. Okay. There's a lot of people that are corporate escapees. They left the corporate job and are now out a coach, consultant, fractional, or whatever else. And in their head, they want to build a company and have employees and do these things, when in truth, they really just want some sort of financial freedom, like enough to pay their bills and maybe go do some traveling and the like. So I think for a lot of people, you have to decide what you're actually trying to build. Because if you're going to build the company, odds are you're going to recreate what you ran away from.
Oh,
that's why I paused. Right. So, do you really want to build a company, or do you just want to be a comfortable solopreneur? And there's nothing wrong with that.
And neither of those are right or wrong. You have to know.
Yes. And if you don't define it, then you're going to constantly chasing shiny objects, because everything is going to be a silver bullet unintentionally. So context for me, I don't consume business books. I don't consume any self-help books. I don't listen to anything that could influence my business direction. The reason being is my business is still on the grow. And every time I listen to a business book, every time I listen to a self-help book, it unequivocally becomes a silver bullet, right? And the whole company shifts and goes that way. Mm-hmm. So I turn off all the noise.
Please ignore all the books behind me.
Pay attention to the guy behind the mirror, right? But it's the truth is we become what we consume. And so we have to be very, very cognizant of the things we're putting into our system. And unfortunately, because we're in an information overload world, it's really easy to get derailed. Yeah. So all context of everything Angie and I are talking about, the best way to wrap your head around this and to make it so everything works from you is, you don't need a website. You don't need a social presence. You don't need an email. You don't need newsletters. You don't need funnels. You don't need all of this. You need the ability to find people who can say yes to you, ask them to buy, and do that over and over again till you build a company to the level that you're comfortable with running. Everything else is fluff. And until you understand that it's getting belly to belly, face to face, and asking them to buy, then everything else is going to derail you from actually building a business, because you're going to spend more time building all the crap, because that's more fun than actually. Yep.
Hey, bingo. Yep. And in general, at some point, not having some of those things may be limiting. That can be okay for some, depending on what you're trying to build, right? Yes. If you're trying to build a brand, those things are going to be essential, right? You're talking to two LinkedIn whores right here.
100%.
So pot's calling the kettle black out here, but it comes back to this idea of clear intent and commitment, so that you're not, I would say that for the first few years of Career Benders, I love consuming business knowledge. A lot of it is so that I have a toolkit to give to others. However, when I was younger in business, I totally fell victim to like, oh, I'm going to burn it all down and I'm going to follow the scale up framework. Then I'm going to burn it all down and follow the EOS framework. And and eventually some things worked. So it's probably good in some regards, but the original probably would have been fine too. So, however, here's what I'll add. I think you also have to be careful, just as careful, not to try to take too many different actions as you do to take no action, because it's also very easy to get caught up in, kind of like you were saying, the fun things that don't actually make money, or the here's why I shouldn't do it, or I need to do it perfectly. There also needs to be a bias for action here. They ain't no dollars coming in.
Absolutely. Well, and let's be completely vulnerable and transparent. Building a business is the toughest damn thing on the planet. There is literally nothing harder to do. I mean, I almost lost everything. I mean, literally, if people don't know the context from my background, my Jeep was repossessed. We almost lost our farm to foreclosure trying to build this business. Like, I had to cash in all my 401ks, investments. My wife ended up having to cash in all her 401ks to keep the company going. Like it's real. It's hard. Here's what I'll tell you how to know what to consume. When you get to a place in your business that you need to know how to do X to move forward, go study X.
Yes.
Right. So it's not what
Targeted.
happens to most people. Yeah, it's very, very, very targeted and focused. What happens to most people is they're consuming, and what they don't realize is people are really damn good marketers. Like, if we look at the old pictures of the gold rush, all the old guys going up the hill, there was always a little shack right there before all these guys go up the hill. And that shack sold shovels, pans, and all the stuff. The only people that made money at the gold rush was that shack selling the shovels, right? But they were really good of like, oh, you got to have this sifting pan and this shovel. That's the world we live in now, but it's just information. So as we're consuming, these good marketers are like, oh, you got to have this, 70 days to freaking $1 billion and all this stuff. And we get, oh my God, that's going to be the thing I need. And that's what gets us in trouble. We have to consume specifically on the issues we have.
Yeah. Grow specific areas instead of all the things all the time. And so I want to bring a whole bunch together as we maybe bring this to a close. Who knows where we're about to go? But I love how we covered two really important components of growing a business of any type. One is this idea that you need to know what and why you're building it. Good old Simon Sinek. You got to know why and what you want out of it. And I love that you brought this to the table, because I feel like I'm a good example of this. I started a coaching business because I wanted to build a business. I wanted to build a brand, and I, in a way, wanted to kind of be entrepreneurial. Coaching was a good vehicle. There are a lot of coaches out there who start businesses in order to coach, and that's okay. You just have to be aware of the differences in the two and what you need to do in order to grow in the right way. So there's the mindset piece. Now to tie back to this networking component of what is going to bring in the business, no matter what your why is, you want to be networking, put out some kind of content, and then go tell people about what you're doing.
100%. So the funniest evolution for coaches, and I love pointing this out. Here's the evolution of a typical coach. I'm going to be a coach that coaches on X. Maybe it's finance, maybe it's self-help, maybe it's mental. That business is really hard to build, but you know what I'm going to do? Now I'm going to start coaching coaches. It's the funniest evolution. And you see a lot of people doing it. There are some phenomenal people that teach people how to coach businesses. I will tell anybody, I see it. I see it just in your passion and energy. But I would tell anybody, before you ever hire a coach, here's 2 questions you should ask, right?
Here it comes. This is super important. I know what's coming.
Question number 1, introduce me to somebody who got results from your coaching that I could talk to about how the process went. Question number 2, introduce me to somebody who your coaching did not work for.
Oh, I didn't expect that one because I have a third.
Oh, bring me the third.
I don't know that. So to go back to the idea that the coach, the train the trainer, right? You start as a trainer and then you train the trainer. I wouldn't trust a trainer who wasn't a successful train.
Yep.
Right. And so that's what's funny about it's hard to go grow a coaching business. So I'll just go coach coaches.
Yep.
I don't want somebody who wasn't successful in building the business. You're now training me to build. Yep. And that's how I always wanted to get into entrepreneurship coaching. However, I needed the validity and my own experience growing my first endeavor, my own endeavor. Yep. And so that's fundamentally different as well of the street cred. And that goes back to everybody's a good marketer. So don't buy into a smokescreen.
100%. 100%. I just love the question, introduce me to somebody that it hasn't worked for, because all your confident, amazing coaches, they're like, sure. How many do you want to talk to? Because we know, and I'm not a coach, I was once upon a time, but we know the person I introduced you to that it didn't work for, the first words out of their mouth are going to be, yeah, I didn't do what they told me to do.
Yep.
Right.
I have one not 5-star Google review. And it was somebody who had the audacity to basically give me a 3-star review and then say that. They were like, I wanted more out of this, but I realized it was probably on me. And I'm like, F you, person. However, it's totally true, because these are, especially in a service or a knowledge engagement, you get in what you put out. But I also would even say it's the same if you're selling printers. If you beat the thing up Office Space style, you're not going to have a good experience because your service is tearing their hair out. So that's a really interesting idea to make sure it's a fit. Yep. And that's important in these types of engagements too.
Yep. And so you got to remember is, everybody is good at the sales conversation when they're sitting across from somebody. So nobody ever really has a sales problem. They have a prospecting problem. It's getting to that conversation that everybody sucks at. So really quick, we covered the networking 4 places, content, and do what Angie and I do and just narrate your story. Bring people into your world and tell them what you're doing on a regular basis. And that works from a context standpoint. Just teach them the things you figured out. Basically.
Try way less hard.
Yeah. Dude, I have a 2.1 GPA in high school. I never learned grammar, and I put a post out on freaking LinkedIn 3 times a day. If a guy like me that's uneducated can figure this shit out, you can figure it out. But on the cold outreach side, because that always freaks everybody out, the easiest way to do cold outreach is think about who your best referral partners are. Mm-hmm. Imagine when I sold commercial printing, that I didn't reach out to people who could buy commercial printing, but I sent cold DMs to all the promotional products companies. Mm-hmm. All you got to do, I don't even put a message with it. I go connect with 10, 20 of them a day. The next day I come back and see who connected with me. And then I say, hey, how'd you get into promotional products? Now, if you were introduced to 100 promotional products companies and you sold commercial printing in the first quarter, how much impact do you think that's going to have on your business? Because one of them is going to be like, hey, I'm actually looking for a new printer. Mm-hmm. Right. So you can do it really simple.
But the key to all of that, if you heard it in there, the approach was to start a conversation. Not, hey, I see you're in promotional products, or you're looking for a new commercial printer.
Right.
It was how's it going? Which is a very, very powerful way to start a conversation, because we know people love to talk about themselves. Speaking of talking about yourself, you want a shameless plug, a little thing you got going on in a few months?
Yeah, so we'll be on year 6 of the Badass Business Summit. And this has been probably the funnest thing that I've ever done. Full transparency. I couldn't get on stages. I realized when I launched my company that nobody knew who the hell Donnie Bovine was. And so I was doing all the tips, the tricks, and everything else to try and figure out how to get on stages. And nobody gave me a stage. So I said, screw it. I'm building my own stage. So we now have a summit that does a couple of things. One, we give somebody their first stage ever. We got a really unique way of pulling that off. And we'll do that every year. And basically, if you buy a VIP ticket, you get a chance to submit a 5-6 minute video. We'll pick 6 people from those videos to go up, and they do a 6-minute speech in front of the entire live audience. And there's a voting, and whoever votes gets the most votes gets to come back and speak on our stage next year.
That's so cool. I
It's
love
fun.
that.
It's fun. But the Badass Business Summit is always designed that where we're going to teach and you're going to put it in action, because I hate going to conferences where you get home and you're like, what the fuck does that triangle mean? Right. Because you take all these notes and you can't remember it. So last year at the summit, we taught them how to get on stages, what you should do when you're on stage, how to sell from stages, how to get the stages. And then we gave everybody a chance to go up on stage and record a 2-minute speaker reel that they could use on their websites. We taught
Love
them
it.
how to get on podcasts. And then I invited 12 podcasters, and you and I should talk about this, invited 12 podcasters to go up and sit on stage, and they sat with their back to the audience. Every attendee was allowed to stand up and give a 60-second pitch. If the podcaster stood up and turned around, you were invited to be guest on their show.
It's the voice.
It's the voice. So, and then we taught them how to dominate on LinkedIn. And then I brought in 3 LinkedIn influencers. I brought in Liam Darmody, Kevin Turner, and Melissa Cohen to sit on the stage and talk about fireside chat with me about how to dominate on LinkedIn. So we are always going to be a summit that is teach a concept, you go put it in play immediately. So
as someone who loves actionable, practical, tactical, the former engineer in me is still in there somewhere. That I love, because you know what happens. You take a notebook full of ideas and maybe you circled the 3 we always recommend that you go implement once you get home.
Yep.
But this is way more powerful because you just do it in real time. I have a feeling I will be there because I'm pretty sure Donnie's stuck with me whether he likes it or not. So
I mean, yeah,
check it out. We'll make sure we'll drop a link here in the comments so that you can all check it out. And this has been a super fun conversation. I kind of don't want to go, but for everybody's sake of getting their week started, I guess we'll say goodbye.
We should do this again. This was fun.
This was super fun. Anything else you want to share before we bid everybody adieu to start the week?
100%. So guys, if you hung out with me and Angie this long, first, thank you. But 2, if you got any value out of this, do Angie a favor and take a screenshot where you're watching this and share out that screenshot. Tag me and Angie in that screenshot to say, hey, you watched this episode. I promise you, I will have me or my team find that tag. I will come give it love and comment on it and help boost and get you more exposure on the platform. But look, having a show like this, building an audience is tough as hell. But if you guys are getting value out of this episode or any other episode she has, screenshot it and share it out. It does 2 things. 1, it brings more eyeballs to her platform, but 2, it lets her know that this is the type of content you're wanting more of. So show her some love, take a screenshot, post it out there, and we'll both come give you some love on it.
Look at this guy giving me a shameless plug, but also practicing what you preach when it comes to be visible, put out content. He may not be a wizard with a wand, but he sure does make magic when it comes to building communities and making genuine connections like we did today. Donnie Boyven, thank you so much for joining me. And I look forward to staying connected. I have a feeling we'll do a 2.0 episode. Everybody out there, check out the Badass Business Summit and join me again next week for another edition of No More Mondays podcast.
See ya.